The story begins as the Demon King launches an all-out invasion on the entire world. This invasion leads to the downfall of many nations, including the Gargan Empire, which has the largest population of humanoid warriors. As humans, elves, and dwarfs slowly become cornered and face extinction, they are forced to take desperate measures. They combine all their forces and fight the demons like there's no turning back. Among them comes a suicide squad that manages to infiltrate the Demon King's castle in a final attempt to slay him. After a long and grueling battle that decides the fate of mankind, the Demon King is finally defeated and the heroes of the suicide squad are about to escape. That is until they stumble upon something even more ominous. They discover a woman shackled in chains, guarded by two monstrously powerful demons. One of the heroes, Theron, seems to recognize the imprisoned girl and decides to stay behind, instructing his two teammates, Kyle and Ursa, to leave without him, and they do accordingly. But on their way out of the castle, they enter a room where a mysterious crimson crystal is being stored. The male hero, Kyle, begins to approach it when several magic orbs strike from above. While he manages to block most of the attacks with his sword, one of the orbs hits him directly, leaving him completely defenseless. That's when Ursa, his mage comrade, steps in front of him and uses the last bit of her power to shield him, sacrificing herself to save his life. As Ursa disappears into nothingness, the mysterious winged attacker finally reveals himself before Kyle. Overflowing with rage and grief, Kyle charges forward in a reckless attempt at revenge. But even after landing a blow, his attack does nothing. The winged demon relentlessly launches enhanced deadly feathers at Kyle, giving him no chance to counter. Kyle's sword spirit informs him that the technique the demon is using is called elimination. An unblockable Heil spell that destroys everything in its path. Knowing he won't survive the next strike, Kyle makes a desperate choice. He decides to release the full power of his sword's gemstone. The sword spirit doesn't object, willing to do anything to protect its worthy wielder. Kyle activates his ultimate attack, unleashing all of the gemstone's power and strikes the demon with everything he has. His blade pierces through the enemy, ending the demon's life along with the sword's as well. Silence follows and Kyle realizes he's the only survivor of the battle. Even though peace is finally restored, he has nothing left. His home, his friends, his loved ones, none of them survived. With nothing to live for, he collapses to the ground, ready to give up. But out of nowhere, the crimson crystal starts glowing uncontrollably. Sensing danger, Kyle pushes himself up with the last of his strength and walks toward the crystal to stop it from doing anything that could harm mankind. But the moment he touches it, everything fades to black. When Kyle regains consciousness, he finds himself lying in his bed in his own room. But how is that even possible? Seeking answers, he rushes to the window and sees his city in the distance. The one that should have been in flames and reduced to rubble completely intact. As tears roll down his cheeks, he becomes convinced that this must be a cruel dream created by his mind. Then the door opens. His childhood friend Lisa enters casually, telling him to come downstairs already because he's been sleeping for too long. Kyle stares at her in disbelief. Lisa, of course, doesn't understand what's going on. She assumes he's acting strange because he has an upset stomach and comes closer to check on him, only for Kyle to pull her in for a tight hug, overwhelmed with joy, just to see her alive again. She blushes and asks him if he's drunk or something. She tries to get away, only for Kyle to hug her more tightly. This ends up with both of them conveniently falling onto the bed, leaving Kyle completely flustered. Lisa, finally gaining some control, shoves Kyle away from her and strikes him with a punch to the gut. She screams at Kyle, saying that whatever he just did to her, she needs some time to process it and must prepare herself mentally before giving him a reply. After saying so, she calls him Ibuka and runs out of his room. Kyle, still clutching his stomach in pain, suddenly realizes that he's not supposed to feel any pain, as this is supposed to be a dream, which means whatever this is, it must be real. He notices something under his blanket, and as he lifts it up, he finds the crimson crystal lying there, making him realize that it was the crystal's power that allowed him to go back in time before the invasion had begun. Looking in the mirror, Kyle figures out that he is now much younger than he was. He takes a look at his body to see that he has no injury, which makes him believe that this is no dream. He takes a look outside the window to see that the land is back to normal. And since Lisa, the love of his life, was alive, he concludes that he has been sent to the past. This thought leads him to take a much closer look at the magic stone, but he doubts that it would have the power to send him to the past. While he deliberates on this, his stomach rumbles from hunger and he rushes out to find something to eat. Fortunately, he was met by a full table of food which Lisa had made. The sight of this reminds him of the time when Lisa would always come over to help him and his mom with the cooking. Without wasting much time, he helps himself out by destroying every single plate. After a while, he ends up finishing everything on the table. At that moment, his brother Theron strolls into the dining room to have his breakfast. However, he is met by a table as empty as his brother's head. The thought of Kyle finishing everything by himself shocks Theron, but he chooses to let it go since that day was Kyle's birthday. Even though Kyle doesn't see this as a worthy enough birthday gift. Meanwhile, seeing Theron, he is reminded that they were just in a fight together before his death. However, the hungry brother leaves to find a solution to his hunger. On the other hand, Kyle finally realizes that he has indeed returned to the past. But in order to get answers, he goes to ask his mother some questions as she always did in his previous life. Kyle's mother spends her time at their underground library. She had been reading all night and had lost track of time. Ignoring that fact, he proceeds to ask her the question. Since she was an archmage, he believed she would be able to provide an answer to it. Just then, he seeks to know if a time-traveling spell exists, and she reveals that it does exist. However, before he gets excited, she goes on to tell him about how rare a spell like that is. Furthermore, she informs him that such a spell cannot be used since it requires an immense amount of magic power, one that even the most powerful mags do not possess. In that moment, he seeks to know if a magic item can actually be a catalyst to store an immense amount of magic power, and she confirms that it is possible. However, such power would require a being that has lived for centuries. Also, there exists the possibility of generating such power from having hundreds of lives lost. In this case, the deaths caused by the demons had led to an immense transfer of magic power to the magic stone that had caused Kyle to return to the past. What would you do with this stone if you could get your hands on it? While you think about this, Kyle's mother brings a book with a picture of the only magic item capable of storing such power. Just as expected, the magic stone in his hands was just the right item. It happened to be the legendary divine dragon's heart which had been missing for over 1,000 years. This completely answers Kyle's questions and he is pleased that he got to have this conversation with his mom after a long time since her death in his past life. Although she is thrilled with how matured he has become, not knowing that she is speaking to a son who is about a decade older. When the two are done with their questions and answer session, she stands up to go and eat. But when he informs her about the absence of any meal, she is left with no choice but to offer it to him as a birthday gift, just as Theron had done earlier. Now, I'm left to believe they are just broke. After that, he wishes him a happy birthday. Looking into her beautiful eyes, he is reminded of the incident that led to her death. Apparently, their town was the closest town to the demon territory. And when the demons proceeded to attack humans, they were the first to be taken down. The touching moment she took her last breath shows itself, and he had vowed to avenge her death. While thinking about this, he gets lost in his thoughts, and she calls him back to reality. The two sit together facing the sun, but Kyle remembers that they would experience the havoc of the demon attack in 3 years. He takes it upon himself to find a way to stop this from happening or risk losing everyone he loves like he did before. He is determined to change his fate and the fate of the humans. But wait, did he really have to stand up and say it like a wannabe top G? Later that night, Kyle spends his time documenting all the future events he can remember. He considers telling people about the pending demon attack, but is convinced that nobody would believe him. Since that's not an option, regardless, he picks up his sword to test himself and see if he stands a chance. Kyle begins practicing with his sword, imagining that he's facing the winged demon that took his life in the previous timeline. Although he can dodge some of the attacks, he is still hit and realizes that he's not yet good enough to be the world's savior. The good thing is Kyle still has 3 years before the great invasion begins. And he decides to take practicing with his sword and magic seriously, which he admits he didn't do last time. Using spells like strength and haste, he increases his stats and notices that he feels more powerful than usual, leaving him wondering if his magic power has increased due to the Crimson Crystal's powers. Regardless, he continues practicing. And now, with a boosted speed, he is able to dodge almost all of the attacks by the winged demon. But as he nearly closes the distance, he gets hit and is thrown to the ground. He figures out that his current body is not yet used to the strength boost his magic is giving, but he must keep going in order to tackle the doomsday. In the meantime, Theon and Lisa are keeping an eye on Kyle in secret from behind the bushes. And they start wondering what's gotten into this idiot all of a sudden. Theron's mom, Miss Ila, arrives to see how her son is doing these days and asks Lisa if he has been behaving. Lisa snitches on Theron, revealing that not only is he not providing for himself, he begs her for food every single day. Ila decides to hear this story later as her interest is in Kyle. She can't help but notice from Kyle's fighting style that something's changed in him. Something serious. She asks Lisa and Theron if something serious has happened. And Lisa at that moment recalls how soulless Kyle's eyes looked the previous day. Neither Lisa nor Theron is sure what happened, but Ila believes the only thing that can change a teenager overnight is if they fall for someone. Lizzie is shocked by Ila's theory, and thinking it's not her, she immediately walks up to Kyle, demanding he confess before she beats the crap out of him. Kyle, of course, has no clue what she is talking about. And as he fails to confess, she as warned proceeds to beat the crap out of him to make up for hurting the poor innocent fellow. Lisa cooks him a nice meal for lunch and Ila and the Wren get to join in on the food as well. Kyle reveals that Ila is his master, and with her here, he asks everyone if they know someone who is influential enough to control several nations of this world. Baron thinks kings have that kind of power, while Lisa thinks the highest-ranking priests have some influence like that. And lastly, Layla thinks the hero Randolph who defeated the Demon King 300 years ago has the power to bend the ears of many nations. The reason Kyle asked them this question is because he wishes to become someone like that, and realistically his chances are slim to become anyone like that. The only thing he can become in the next 2 to 3 years is a hero, of course. That is if he works his ass off. Feeling tense, he gets up, leaving everyone wondering if this idiot got hit in the head or something. Later at night, Kyle sits with dozens of books from his mom's library, trying to acquire as much knowledge as possible to help him become a hero. The comes to his room, having heard about Kyle's goal, and gives him the most generic advice about becoming strong. Kyle, however, states that strength alone isn't enough. A hero needs money as well, since both traveling and adventuring cost a lot. Furthermore, a hero needs connections with powerful people who can help in political matters. And lastly, the thing a hero needs most is luck. The Wren understands, but what he still doesn't get is why the hell Kyle wants to become a hero. He's not curious. He just believes that Kyle's real goal is something else. And becoming a hero is just a step to achieve that. Kyle is impressed by Theron's intuition. But he still can't reveal his true reasons, so he simply asks him to trust him regardless. Theron hopes for the best for his friend and leaves the room, wishing him good luck. Now that Kyle's finally alone, he starts reading a book and finds some useful info that could help him make money. He also plans to meet a woman, a crucial encounter that he believes will surely help him become a hero. The next morning, he decides to go on a journey in 2 days and tells Ila and the Wren about his plans during breakfast. Ila is surprised by Kyle's strong will and determination and asks if he has spoken to his mom yet. He has, and she cried a bunch. Ila then decides to make her good-for-no son join Kyle on his adventure, and Kyle is glad to hear it since he had intended to take the Wren with him in the first place. Ila jokes right in front of the Wren that he'll make a good human shield, and Kyle adds that he's indeed suitable as a sacrificial pawn. Jokes aside, after breakfast, Kyle breaks the news to Lee, who is visibly upset to the point that she can't even look at him. When she learns that he intends to go to the royal capital for work experience, she asks to come along, but Kyle instantly refuses, not wanting to put her in danger. Still, she persists, saying she won't be a liability as she's been trained with the Oracle warriors, knowing there's no shutting her up. Kyle kisses her, then makes the promise that once he comes back, he'll visit her first and continue what he just started with her here. Lisa doesn't know what to say. Regaining her composure, she makes Kyle promise that he won't do anything reckless and will return to her safely. Then, under the trees, they share a long, quiet hug. Since he has a long trip ahead, he needs to prepare for it. He takes a walk to the market and brings Lisa along. As they walk, he apologizes to her for stressing her, but it wasn't really stress. She notices a beauty in the market. It's an elf. And she calls his attention to the pretty elf. When the elf turns to their side, she can't help but notice how stunning she looks. Kyle recognizes her, too. It's Oza. He walks towards her, thinking of the best way to introduce himself again. He recalls that one day in his first life, she had told him her true name, and since it's a secret, he thinks it's the best way to reach her. He calls her the name Excess before he realizes that was a huge mistake. At that time, only 3 people in the world know her true name, just her parents and her. So, she sees him as an immediate threat. He tries to calm her down, but knowing her, he knows she'll make a scene. So, he decides to make her sleep instead. He invokes her true name to make her sleep, and she rests on his body. As he sighs in relief that it's over, Lee burns with anger behind him. She accuses him of cheating and he tries to explain that he met Oza when she wasn't in the world. But what does that mean? Because she's right there. Refuses to listen and insists that if he travels alone, he'll surely collect all the ladies in the royal capital. So she will surely follow him. He can deal with her another time. ZA is the priority. She wakes up and he tries to explain himself. There's barely any way he can do that because why would she believe that she'll meet him in 5 years? They'll fall in love and she'll be the one to tell him her true name. A stranger knowing her true name is also very dangerous for her. So, the only way she can be sure she's safe is to kill him. Kyle doesn't want to die. Not when he hasn't even found the solution to the world's ruin. So, he finds a solution. He tells her that he can make an application of contract with her and vow that he won't use her name for evil until he tells her where he got it. She's even shocked that he knows about applications of contract. She asks him if he knows what will happen if he breaks the contract and he says yes because he'll die. That works for her, but she can't make an application until it's a full moon and the full moon is still weeks away. So, she asks him to stay there with her. He can't do that because he has to travel the next day. Left with no choice, they make a decision. The following day, Kyle's parents send him off. Lisa insists she'll follow him. So, he goes with Lisa, the Theron, and of course, Urza, who is following him because she wants to create the application of contract. He walks away from the path they were meant to take to the royal city. And Laser asks him why. He tells them he wants them to go to Sunyuad first. He reminds them of the legend around that area, the Magic Queen Labyrinth. He brings out the map and says they're going there. They laugh at him, saying no treasure exists there, and Theron even insults him that someone so money-conscious will only get duped. They insist the map that was sold to him is fake. But when Oza checks, she sees the paper is old and might be original. Since a pretty girl is telling them it could be real, they all decide to trust her. However, Lisa shows them that where the treasure is marked on the map is actually very far and the labyrinth is very deep. He tells them he has his plan and they don't have to worry. And for his plan, he hopes they'll dig their way through and won't have to fight. They arrive at the labyrinth and they start digging. The Wren wonders why they can't just enter, but he explains that there are magic circles there and they'll have to fight long wars. The Ron wonders if he saw all of that on the map, but no, he hadn't. He had experienced it before, knew how much he had to do before getting to the treasures, and doesn't want that stress again. He tells them that he also didn't imagine that the first thing he'd do after deciding to be a hero would be to dig. Urza comes to distract. She commands them on how they should dig, and they all obey the woman commander. After a long day, they all go to eat a meal made by Lisa for them. When each of them takes a bite of the meal, they're shocked at how amazing it tastes. Orza even says the meal refills her lost energy. She sees that Lisa has hung a boar and asks her how she caught it. She tells her she caught it with her hand, which shocks Urza. Zia makes a pool for herself and Lisa to bathe. The pool gets Lisa excited and they start to talk. Lisa talks about how much she's jealous of people who can use magic because she can't use it. Oza appreciates her great strength, which she used to capture the boar, and asks if she got that strong because of Kyle, which she admits. She tells Oza she doesn't have to be scared that Kyle knows her true nature because she's sure Kyle can't hurt her. She admits that she knows Kyle is hiding something, but she's sure he'll tell them when he thinks it's right. They play like sisters until they continue digging. Oza returns to dig with Kyle, but confronts him about his true purpose. She insists that the other two may trust him because they know him, but she doesn't know him and has no reason to trust him. She reveals she knows the ring on his hand has something to do with his mission, and he admits she's right. It increases his strength. He keeps digging to try to distract her, and fortunately he gets to the treasure and asks her to call the others. They enter and see the gold coins there. The runs there and bathes himself in the money while the others stand in awe. He reminds them that the money is just for him to reach his purpose faster and not for stupid use. When he sees they're distracted, he excuses himself to find his sword. He goes to the sword and a bright light shines from it. The spirit comes out and admits it's been a while since she's seen a human. Will he enter a contract with this sword again? Watch out.